Well, thank you for joining us. You know, it's pretty unique for us to have members of the intelligence community come out and share what they're doing and their activities. Obviously, there's always a veil of secrecy around these agencies. I'm privileged to be joined by these two gentlemen as we talk about what the intelligence community is doing around cloud and moving to the cloud and around open source. So let's just hear it one more time for these two gentlemen, and we're looking forward to this. So Ryan, lots of people in this audience, they probably don't know what's going on in the Intel space and what's going on with this program called C2S. Can you level set kind of what you've been doing for the last couple of years?
Yeah, sure. So C2S is part of the larger D&I IC IT Enterprise initiative. That's fundamentally about doing in common that which is commonly done, and really driving out information sharing and collaboration across the community, which traditionally has not been all that prevalent with stovepipe submission domains and the like. So C2S really kind of as an idea was born 6 or 7 years ago by people a lot smarter than I am, who said, you know, when applications and missions require IT infrastructure, you know, it's like 180 days for us to get a single server onto a single data center floor to lay down operating systems and databases and web tiers and the like. And it was just too long, and it really drove bad behavior across the community within our developers, who had to then project out a perceived end state of their infrastructure to meet kind of unknown demand for their application. So they're speccing out infrastructure before they write a line of code. And we said, we got to do that different, and we started to move from physical to virtual. We built in a lot more business automation capabilities. It was all really good. But fundamentally, what we realized is that cloud as a technology domain was far outpacing what we could do as the government in building these on-premise capabilities. So that was the point at which kind of C2S as an idea was spawned, and a competitively awarded contract to Amazon Web Services. And C2S really is what we sort of jokingly call a private instantiation of a public cloud, right? So we kind of take both parts of what is public and building it into IC networks for IC consumption. You know, and I think what's really important is that we're starting to see maturation across the community in its use of C2S. When we start looking at sort of key performance indicators of how it's being used, it's funny, we started with how many accounts, so we were trying to gauge appetite and interest, to, you know, how much utilization and adoption, to how much storage and how much compute instance runtimes that we're having, and those numbers have grown considerably to the point of you know, creating some challenges from a capacity standpoint, but it's been really good to see. But now what we're finally realizing and seeing now, and we'll get some great examples, is that the intelligence community is really seeing the value and the mission advantage that's provided through C2S, provided by partnerships with AWS, partnerships with other commercial vendors that then build capabilities like Red Hat's OpenShift product on top of C2S that add greater value and speed to mission of development of capability. So now what we're seeing more is, in less interesting numbers, but really stories and anecdotes of mission advantage gleaned from the use of C2S.
Lieutenant Hinke, as a tenant organization of C2S, can you talk about some activities that you within your program are doing to prepare to move to C2S?
Absolutely. So I'm in the same boat. So when we did IOC for C2S, I was one of the, from an NRO perspective, some of the first customers into it. And in this way that Ryan's provided the infrastructure, I'm the next layer up. I'm that common platform layer. So we do acquisition of common platform type services and shared managed services in a software layer perspective. So for us, it's been an opportunity to adopt the best practices of commercial that are in cloud, and it's been an opportunity for us to foster some new vendor partnerships and take advantage of capabilities at a larger scale than we've been able to do in the past. So really building on the decisions of some of the other foundational components, in this case iSite infrastructure, to take the next step for us at NRO with the common platforms, and keeping with that exact same theme of doing those things that are commonly done. And as we build our way up the stack, that means that the mission app developers have really less and less things that they need to worry about, and that's gained a lot of increased speed to market for those mission app developers.
Ryan, you mentioned Red Hat OpenShift and helping agencies move to C2S faster. Can you elaborate a little bit about that and any announcements that you want to make?
Sure. So, we're happy to, in partnership with Red Hat, the OpenShift product is accredited now for use across the intelligence community on top of C2S. The value there is that not only do you now inherit the security accreditation of the infrastructure, but now OpenShift's product in the platform as a service space, inheriting that accreditation, and as was pointed out, right, the speed to mission and delivery, really streamlining not only development process, but all the security process as well, which is really big. As a program, right, we kind of have three main strategic pillars. The first is building a common ubiquitous infrastructure across the classification domains, C2S, and then unclassified and commercial AWS. And then sort of filling in from there. And then having a global presence is kind of the second piece. But the third piece, relevant to this conversation, right, is adding greater utility to the underlying infrastructure. And really that's about almost abstracting the underlying infrastructure, right? We want to let developers and missions not have to be infrastructure experts to take advantage of cloud. And I think the OpenShift product in particular is a key piece of making that happen. And so we're looking at PaaS and SaaS offerings to add that greater utility in concert with the AWS Marketplace for the IC and additional AWS services that we integrate into the platform. But even, again, third-party vendors that kind of best-in-breed capabilities that we can then integrate on top of the infrastructure that users then interface at that level. Again, just like OpenShift, then getting them accredited to speed up the development lifecycle that is taking into account the full sort of DevSecOps lifecycle for CI/CD within the cloud space.
Lieutenant Hinke, so I know that your program had looked at several different options, and moving to C2S really evolved around this concept of containers. So can you kind of talk through the process that you guys went through?
So for some of these things that didn't necessarily start, we recognized that containers was going to be a revolutionary method for us to address the transportability needs. When we talk about sharing things, transportability is really important. And that's not just across different infrastructure providers, but that's across domains, and that's across different ways. And so we started to ask ourselves, where in the platform perspective can we start to commonize? And that's really where our focus and our real utility comes from in this case, OpenShift as a centralized platform that I can build on the internet, on the unclass, I can bring it to C2S, and I know it's going to run, and I know that all the other inheritance, we talk about the DevSecOps, and we talk about the concept of security inheritance and how important that is for you to address the cybersecurity, the underlying infrastructure, kind of the finishing touches, the definition of done. And if we can start to advance that up a little bit higher, and when we look at containers specifically, we can start to move missions, we can move them between agencies, we can move them, we can really move them anywhere we want to. And we have to start with what are the layers of commonality? And in this case, we've seen Docker as and the concept of containers as being something that is very much at the cornerstone of transportability.
Yeah, so I think you guys are pretty advanced in moving to containers. I think there was even a Fortran app that was containerized by
That's
by
true.
some
You can put
folks.
Fortran in a container.
So there's a lot of folks in this room that are both government or systems integrators. What advice do you have if they are about to embark on moving to the cloud? What advice do both of you guys have for these folks?
So for me, I think I came into it without a computer science or any kind of background in that. So the first thing I did, and it's consistent with what we've heard from the CIOs and the CTOs all day today, which is you have to invest in your people and you have to invest in yourself. So you have to actually make sure you understand and you're capable of having a qualified opinion, because that actually matters. And so we get folks in acquisitions, we get folks in cybersecurity, we get folks in system engineering that they are process gates, and that's just not okay anymore with some of these things. And for all the government folks, you have to invest in yourself. Take the time to really learn about the infrastructure. And then for the flip side, for our industry partners, it's a new field of potential industry partners across the board. There are new entrants to this market all the time. And so for them, it's about helping the government take best advantage of these things. It's the same themes that we've heard several times throughout this, which is, in many cases, the government really needs some help to adopt well. It's one thing to adopt, it's another thing to adopt well and to talk about optimization. And that really requires constant education and embracing the partnership with our industry partners and the vendors that are here that are capable of teaching us if we only listen.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would offer that helping the government take advantage of its strategic investments, helping us leverage these new capabilities to deliver mission faster. And I think what's really awesome about the opportunity that C2S presents, but ICITE writ large, is the development of these new partnerships and new relationships that traditionally vendors have found the barriers to entry to the intelligence community far too great. They didn't understand how we worked or the infrastructure that we used. Well, guess what we use today? AWS is public cloud. It is a like capability so that there's seamless transition of those technologies into use for the intelligence community. And I think from a partner perspective, what we're looking for is help in making those investments and those decisions add greater value to the mission, by understanding the technology, developing those skills, investing in the people embedded within the agencies is important so that we can continue to move things forward.
Yeah, and one of the things is it's implied, since we're using cloud and the IC community is moving to the cloud, that it's secure. But I'd like you guys to both address, from a cybersecurity perspective, kind of considerations that you had and maybe folks in the audience will have as they move to the cloud.
So for us, for myself in platform services, one of the first things that we had to do was to say to ourselves, do we have the right tools? So it's one thing to have your governance folks understand what they're looking at. It's another thing to have given them the right information. And we need a whole new family of secure DevOps type related tooling. And we've seen some of these things when we talk about the security of the supply chain. In many cases, it's about, will the product work? We make certain assumptions in low-side development, like the internet will always be there, and you may be it's a private instantiation of a public cloud, and it doesn't work like the internet. So like there are certain assumptions that you make as vendors that are just broken by the cybersecurity reality. So it's a lot about how do we change this to account for the right tooling at a really low level to make sure that people have testing of their code quality. They have testing of a new definition of networks, a whole new generation of software-defined networking that we have to really start to address and understand, because where yesterday it was a hardware firewall, today it's not. And so now you have to apply the exact same, the why has to remain the same, but the implementation is going to be very different. And so we've seen a lot of evolutions in the low-level tooling needed to actually be able to provide the information to make those CIO-level risk assessments. We have to completely retool some of the underlying pieces.
Yeah, I think we have really shifted the mindset of traditional security in the intelligence community when it comes to IT systems. We used to build sort of the castle and moat, where the moat is there to protect kind of on the outside. We sort of always joke about sharks with lasers in the moat and that kind of thing to protect us. But what we found is that on the inside, that you have free reign of the castle itself, and all the doors are unlocked, right? So, we relied on that moat to protect us. But what we have in this partnership with AWS and in the C2S program is a very different mindset, right? Of security built from the inside out. Today, right? These public clouds operate in the most dynamic of cyber battlefields called the internet. They inherently believe there are bad actors on the inside, and they protect themselves accordingly. And so what we've done with C2S is we've taken that inside-out security model. We've dropped it into isolated, air-gapped, classified network domain to take advantage of also from the outside in. And I think what we've got is a much better security posture just from an infrastructure perspective. And then what we've done, right, is we've accredited the underlying infrastructure that workloads on top can fully take advantage of all of those built-in security controls. And then we add on top of those various managed services like OpenShift that have their own accreditations that, again, move that accreditation up the stack. But fundamentally, it's about educating our cybersecurity personnel on the technology and the domain and what's possible. The way we used to do scans of systems often isn't relevant when they're containerized. They're often not relevant when they're dynamic and we're running sort of blue-green deployments and they just scanned it and it went away, and now what happens when it comes back? And so we just have to educate our cybersecurity folks. We've also got to reinvest in the tools that we have in place to monitor those systems. And we can't be satisfied anymore with granting an ATO and then in 3 years we'll readdress you, right? We want to do that in real time because the infrastructure and the systems are far more dynamic. So we have to be able to take advantage of the data collection opportunities that are available in cloud and in platforms to collect that data, analyze it in real time, and then come up with a relevant scoring system, if you will, to validate the security posture of our systems in a much more regular and real-time fashion so that when things deviate from security best practices, we can alarm on it and we can fix it rather than waiting for 3 years to take advantage.
And I think that the industrial base has really responded with, when we look at everyone's concerned with security in a public cloud. And so we've really seen this huge uptick in infrastructure level capabilities that are just out of the box now. I don't have to go and invent a new method for tracking in real time what containers are running where. So like there's some of those things that are just, they're a commodity. They're just embedded in everything that we have. And that's been a huge opportunity for us to address inheritance, especially in the security world. If I can address, the higher I can go with those inherited controls, the faster I can get speed to market for the mission functionality. And so starting with the infrastructure, rolling up to the platform level, we have this huge opportunity to take a overwhelming majority of the cybersecurity considerations out of the hands of multiple hands and really start to centralize them in a few correct places. And then with the other options for external checking, we can actually have a far more secure system in real time, and I can know where things are without having to wait. I can get a risk assessment in moments. I know where every single piece of software is deployed. Those are the kind of things that we can now start to address with this, frankly, out of the box. It's a feature. It's not something that I develop, it's a feature. No new novel development required, which is really cool to be able to take advantage of that and then take the next step in efficiencies.
You know, as we wrap up, I would add that my observation is the IC through the iSight initiative is truly doing what is commonly done. An application that receives an ATO on C2S from NGA can be shared with the NRO without having to go through accreditation, without having to go through development. That ultimately, as taxpayers in this room, saves us time, speed to mission. These are all things that have been really real benefits for the IC community. So as we wrap up, I do want to thank both of you guys for your time, and let's give them a hand.